What's going on here?
Well, I would suggest, and what you're describing is very real, and I would suggest it comes in part out of fear. You know, global warming, if you follow the science, as I expect most people in this room do, it's scary as hell. It is scary as hell, and climate scientists I work with are at a state of near panic that we may not have the ability to turn this around and drive those emissions down sufficiently to stabilize our climate. So you can imagine, for the average person who's just trying to, find money for their kids' tuition or put food on the table, this is overwhelming. And I think psychologically it's very powerful that way. And if you have somebody else, and this is the other half of the equation, is an orchestrated, cynical attack to inject doubt and uncertainty into science, right out of the playbook of big tobacco. In fact, the fossil fuel industry, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and others have literally hired people who waged that campaign on behalf of big tobacco to inject uncertainty into the science, which showed that smoking causes cancer and respiratory disease, and we're able to postpone for decades meaningful action on smoking, and how many lives were lost. So that's the other half of this equation. We're trying to actually prove a positive, and it's easy to prove a negative. Don't worry about this. And so we do have to get more effective at connecting with people and helping them understand that, in fact, there is an overwhelming consensus in the science community, the climate science community, among credentialed scientists who spent their careers studying some facet of this issue, that global warming is well underway, that the burning of fossil fuels is the primary driver of the change we're seeing this century, and that we have to move very quickly to turn that around. And it won't be easy. I think the key to that puzzle is to stop talking to each other so much and to get out to what my communications director calls the confused middle, which I know sounds a little bit arrogant, but it's really pointing us to the part of the American electorate. A lot of folks are independent-minded, and helping them understand that this is really connecting. So we've invested in our own organization in expanding our economics capacity, expanding our ability to show that in Massachusetts, the way the climate is changing here, it's affecting the $94 million annual cranberry business. That we may not be able to grow Granny Smith apples in just another decade's time. That our forest industry, our dairy industry, winter recreation, and so on. By talking about impacts in a way that can help grab people's attention, that's important. And then you have to come right in with the solution set. Makes good sense on all kinds of levels, including creating clean energy jobs.
And when we follow that up with, oftentimes our minds are changed by our neighbors or our family members, right? That's the social connections we all have. But if it's your neighbor who's suddenly gone back to thinking there's no such thing as global warming, you lose the ability of our own networks to affect change. So what to do about that?
Well, I think it's, first of all, as Kevin said, and he represents it, overwhelming number of scientists recognize this is a serious, serious problem. And if you take time to actually look at the facts, it's very clear. So I think it's first just each one of us getting educated and then trying to share facts as opposed to myths. I think the challenge that's happening here is there are some very big, powerful interests who don't want to see change. Oil and gas and the coal industry. There are billions, hundreds of billions of dollars at stake, and so they're pushing back. And there was some momentum, especially after Inconvenient Truth and what Al Gore was doing, and then all of a sudden there's this pushback, and it's a big fight, just like there've been other fights. And I think one of the things I think that we have to do, both as citizens and in the environmental movement, is we have to better combine our forces. During civil rights, there was something called a Leadership Conference on Civil Rights. There were all these different organizations. There was the SCLC, there was NAACP, there was the Pullman Car Brotherhood workers, etc. But they all got together, and they said, let's have a coordinated strategy. Let's do the March on Washington. Let's do the activism. And then let's push for the Civil Rights Act first, and the Voting Rights Act. And they got coordinated, and there wasn't, this approach or that approach. And I think, and it was both grass tops and grassroots. The leadership got together. And then there was the grassroots activism, all the young people and others who went and did the freedom rides and the mobilizations and the sit-ins and the voter registration drives, etc. I think we need something similar. And I think that, there was all this excitement and we got very close. We got the cap and trade bill through the House and then I think it got stalled in the Senate. I think we have to step back and say, okay, how do we get all the leaders lined up, leaders of the environmental movement, and then also settle on a playbook. Here's a set of facts that we're all going to learn, and then here's a strategy, here's an agenda that we're going to all fight for, common, and have the disputes within that leadership. It's part of what I'm trying to do in my organization, Be the Change. I love seeing us start this organization because I saw a need for lining up the service movement. And so we did that. We brought all leaders of the service movement together and said, let's do a new campaign to try to take national service to another level. And we basically worked on our own agenda. We spent a year saying, what can we agree on? And then we worked closely with Senators Kennedy and Hatch, and then we did both the Grassroots Summit and the Grassroots Movement. And this legislation got passed in the first 100 days with 79 votes in the Senate. So very well bipartisan. So there's a way to do this. And I think the setback now is actually an opportunity to get everybody together and say, okay, how do we regroup? But also understand that this is going to take what the leaders here in Brookline are doing at the local level, every citizen getting involved, all the way to the national leaders, and the state leaders like Rob and the national leaders like Kevin, to say, how do we all settle on a playbook so that we're all in the same boat rowing together? I think that's really what it's going to take.